Again, it's about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations? And that should be a very important question to ask.
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. To have a 67% chance of staying below a 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise, the best odds given by the IPCC, the world had 420 gigatons of CO2 left to emit back on January 1st, 2018. Today, that figure is already down to less than 350 gigatons. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? With today's emissions levels, that remaining CO2 budget will be entirely gone within less than 8.5 years. There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with these figures here today, because these numbers are too uncomfortable and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us. But the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you.
Bernie Sanders, if elected president, wants to prosecute fossil fuel company executives for their role in climate change and their role in covering it up. And that, to me, is the most ambitious and best climate policy I think I have ever seen, when taken all comprehensively. Because listen, we can do the other parts of the plan that Bernie Sanders has laid out. We can reduce emissions, we can get on renewable energy, we can update our energy infrastructure, we can create all these new jobs, and that's wonderful. But the people who caused this problem and the people who lied to us about it for decades, as Bernie points out, what do you do, just let them walk free? No. No, they lied to us. And when any other company in this country lies to us about the product they're putting out, whether it's a pharmaceutical, whether it's a chemical, whatever it is, whether it's a defective car, when they lie about it to the public, they get prosecuted. They used to get prosecuted. We typically don't actually prosecute the CEOs anymore. We slap them with some fines. They pay billions in the civil suits. But it's a stern warning, don't ever do this again. And unfortunately, they most likely always do it again. And that's because we're not throwing people in jail. And Bernie wants to change that. And Bernie is 100% correct. You want to get to the root cause of climate change? Then you got to go after the people who've been covering it up, again, for decades. Their own scientists had been warning them. Some documents show that their scientists were concerned about this in the late 40s and early 50s from ExxonMobil, folks. That's how far back their own scientists said, wait a minute, I think this is screwing up the atmosphere. This was before the terms climate change or global warming even existed, but it's in their internal documents. And we know that, and those are publicly available for anyone who wants to go see them, and I suggest everyone does. But then we knew for certain in the 70s that they said, yep, we're doing this. This is bad for us. Where do we go from here? And where they went from there was the cover-up, spending millions upon millions of dollars every single year, funding these AstroTurf groups, paying off scientists to lie about the effects of climate change, and that's what Bernie wants to get them on. It's not just, hey, you destroyed the environment, we're going to sue the pants off you and then throw your CEO in jail. No. In many cases, the cover-up is worse than the crime, and that's what's happening here.
I'm 60 years old. I come from Sweden, and I want you to panic. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. I have said those words before, and a lot of people has explained why that is a bad idea. A great number of politicians have told me that panic never leads to anything good. And I agree. To panic unless you have to is a terrible idea. But when your house is on fire and you want to keep your house from burning to the ground, then that does require some level of panic. Our civilization is so fragile, it is almost like a castle built in the sand. The facade is so beautiful, but the foundations are far from solid. We have been cutting so many corners.
Isaiah 41:21. Let them bring forth and show us what will happen. Let them show the former things, what they were, that we may consider them, and know the latter end of them, or declare to us things to come. Show the things that are to come hereafter, that we may know that you are God's. Yes, do good or do evil, that we may be dismayed and see it together. Indeed, you are nothing, and your work is nothing. He who chooses you is an abomination. It's time for prophecy to be fulfilled, and all these are more signs.